Hey, everybody. How are you? Thanks for having us here. Thanks for having me in particular. I want to just get an understanding of who's out in the audience here today. How many sports fans? Okay, so almost everybody. How many fans or people that follow science very carefully in their life? Okay, pretty high percentage given the audience here. The fact is, in the United States, 70% of all US adults follow sports. Sadly, only 13% follow science on a regular basis. So this is why it's so important, the work of the Green Sports Alliance, and why the Alliance was formed 5 years ago, to try and leverage the cultural and market influence, the power that sports has, the power to influence us with our heroes, the athletes, and the teams that we follow, to get the message out on climate change. And just starting from 6 teams back in 2010, we are now 400 members, 15 leagues, and 14 countries. So there's a huge demand and a huge groundswell for what's going on in the use of sports to help talk about and get the message out on climate change. So what's unique about sports? I'm just going to grab this here for a second. What is unique about sports? Sports, when you go to a sporting event, what are some of the things that you experience there emotionally? Can I get some responses there? Excitement. And when you're a big sports fan, you might have passion for your team. You might have camaraderie. You might have a lot of friends and a big effort to win and a lot of competition. You have energy, right? And so you have a target audience that is ripe to be talked to. They're there, they're emotional, they're passionate, and if you can find a way to connect to them, they're in a good state to listen to what you have to say. However, when you go to a sporting event, just like any other entertainment, what do you go there for? Anybody? To be entertained, right. Or to watch your team win, or hopefully to root on, or to have a great time with your friends. You don't go to hear messages on climate change, right? And so you've got this great opportunity and a huge obstacle. You've got a lot of people, remember, 170 million people in the United States alone, and the benefit of that is it's not political at a sporting event. Unfortunately, climate change and the whole science around it has gotten political, as we know. But when you're at a game, you're not a Republican or a Democrat. If you're in Washington, you're a Nationals fan, or you're a Wizards fan, or you're a Redskins fan, or a Capitals fan, or a DC United fan. Whatever it is, that's how you identify. And so sports cuts across all of these different demographic segments that we have, that we pigeonhole ourselves into in other parts of our lives. When we're there, we're just all rooting. And so that's another reason why it's super strong and a super great opportunity to be able to reach these people. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of how some sports teams and their sponsors have managed to bridge that gap, to connect with the fans while not interrupting their enjoyment of the game. Several years ago, when we first started working with the Green Sports Alliance, at Green Bear Group, my company, we developed something called Sustainable Saturdays for the Seattle Mariners baseball team in the Pacific Northwest. And this was a combination of people coming to the game. They got a little giveaway of a compost thing they could use at home. And there was a quiz. And it was in between innings, so it didn't break up the action. And people texted back in so that it gathered attention from people under 40, not just people who are the parents' generation. It really targeted to millennials and the smartphone generation as well. And so they texted in their answers to a series of questions about their team. And as a result of that, a prize was chosen. The winner was up on the big board at the end of the 7th inning, and during the 7th inning stretch, it was made to be fun. And people got a prize out of it, and a little bit of learning happened on the way. Then the follow-up was that they kept doing this over and over throughout the season, a whole season long, and then when they measured this year upon year, they found as much as a 30% increase in some communities around the greater Seattle area of people doing composting at home. So another key element of the use of sports and any fan engagement type of program, whether it's sports or other entertainment, is you have to measure your results, right? Otherwise, you don't know if this is being effective or not. Similarly, the Portland Trail Blazers basketball team, NBA, up in Portland, Oregon, they ran a season-long, actually multiple season campaign, encouraging people to bike to the games. Because not a lot of people realize this, but even if you reduce the entire carbon footprint of the team and the entire venue, you still have 70% of your carbon footprint because of the fans driving to the game. So they wanted to encourage in a really bike-friendly city, which I guess Washington, D.C. here is not that bad. I've done a couple of bike rentals while I was here. To encourage more people to bike. So they did a Bike to Blazers campaign. And they encouraged people to bike to the game. In fact, they had a very special game where one of the players, Brandon Roy, actually biked to the game himself. And they got 10,000 people to come and bike to that game. Immediately after that, they found that instead of 5 to 10 people biking to every game, every home game, they had 200 people biking to every home game. They had to install additional bike racks. So again, measuring afterwards what the impact that they had on the fans, but making it fun, making it something that's not going to interrupt, and making it something that where fans see their athletes, see their heroes, and using the athletes to engage with the fans. So there's just a couple of quick examples. The point that I wanted to make, and if you take one thing away from this, and then we'll open it to a few questions. Sports is a huge platform. It's a great leverage point. It crosses across all those demographics. It's a great opportunity that we have as a country to use our sports platforms, to use our athletes, to use our teams and leagues as a way to get the message out about climate change, about changing our attitudes, about changing our behaviors, about engaging our politicians and our leaders. So if you're more interested in hearing more about this, please go to greensportsalliance.org, and please consider coming to our summit next year in Sacramento on June 27, 28, and 29. We're almost 1,000 leaders, and for the first time open to fans and the public, coming to this conference where there will be speakers, athletes, fans, and leaders from all levels of government as well. And the best thing about it, it's being held at the brand new Golden One Center in Sacramento where the Sacramento Kings play. That stadium, the first time ever, 100% renewable power. It's all solar powered from panels on their roof and panels from a locally developed solar farm. So back to the previous speaker, solar is hitting all over the place in the United States as well. Okay, so we're running short of time. We can take a few questions.
Thank you so much, Joe. Now we are open for a few questions. Max? Francis? Okay.
Thanks, Joe. Is this on? Yes.
There you go.
Richard Jordan, chairman of the NGO Committee on the UN and Sports. Obviously, you've had success with leagues, but we find just the opposite at the United Nations. When the leagues come in, they want to make presentations on what they've done, which is fine, but they're really not open to new partnerships or new ideas. How do you overcome that? Thank you.
Wow. Excellent point. Stakeholders at every level, whether it's at the team level, even at the individual athlete level, and then, of course, at the league level, we all have our vested interests, right? I mean, the league needs to have something to showcase the work that they're doing. The team needs a way to connect with its fans. The players want to improve their own personal brand with the community, and so that perhaps they can negotiate a better deal, or maybe they're marketable if they become a free agent. So I think for us, the biggest key that we found was probably two things. One is really sitting down and engaging them as partners and saying, what do you need out of this? What do you want out of this? Because we know this is good for you and good for the sport and good for our planet. You have to tell us, how can we be good partners with you? And so we've developed those relationships with all of the major leagues, with the NHL, with MLB, with MLS, with the NBA, and NASCAR, the USTA, and the US Golf Association. We now have relationships with all of these leagues, primarily because we listen to what their constraints are and try and help them develop programs to A, celebrate what they're already doing, and B, to help them actually measure and encourage their teams to measure what are you doing now and how can you do a little bit better. Because the bottom line is, we know it's all over the map, right? It's an entertainment industry. And so theoretically, you could be criticized saying, well, none of this is absolutely necessary. True. But if you're going to start and try and get people to engage, you have to start where they're at and try and encourage them to do a little better. And so our slogan and our theme coming forward from now into next year at the summit and then beyond is play greener. It doesn't mean you have to be great already. I mean, great, the new stadium that the Kings have built, it's a model. But not everyone is building a new stadium, right? So how do you work where you are? And we have expertise, we have connections, we have folks and resources to help them, to actually sit down with them and go in and do audits and say, okay, you could save on water here, you could save on energy here. And that's part of the deal. We figure that it's not just, we're not going in to try and tell them anything to do. We're inviting them to come in, and we want to help them to get better because, you know, we really believe it's not only in the best interest of the team and the league, but obviously, you know, we want to have a place where our families and our children and our grandchildren have sustainable communities to live and play in, right? So that's really what it's all about, is when you connect with people on that level. Hope that answers it somewhat, and happy to talk to you afterwards individually if you like as well. Okay.
Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Natalia, and
Hi,
I
Natalia.
have a question about the relationship of sports in general and the Olympics and climate, especially because we saw in Rio that there was a lot of push for climate awareness. So is there anything that you're thinking about in terms of the upcoming Olympics?
Yeah. Really, really large opportunity, right? The Olympics, more than most sports, it happens so infrequently. It's only every 4 years if you're thinking of the Summer Olympics, or every 2 if you conclude the Winter Olympics. So its scarcity actually provides bigger attention on it. In terms of plans that we have specifically, I would say that 2 years out is still a little bit beyond the specific planning horizon for campaigns. I can tell you about something that we're in development right now with, and that's recently we worked with the White House and Barack Obama's administration to get declared the first Green Sports Day. It was October 6th. We are taking that as an organization, the Green Sports Alliance, and stewarding that for the next year, so that next October, we're hoping to expand it into an entire week and celebrate accomplishments across all the major sports and use it as a platform for fan engagement as well. Now, we don't yet have an agreement in place with the Olympics for the coming years after that, but we see that as a springboard. We believe that this can be Earth Day writ large, along the lines of the NFL's campaign with breast cancer awareness and that sort of thing. That sort of scale and scope, the potential is huge. So keep your eyes open for publicity about Green Sports Day and Green Sports Week as the year rolls out. And we will be connecting with the folks at the Olympics more as the year goes on.
We have time for one last question. Would you like me? Okay.
Hello, Cynthia Laux-Kreidler,
Hi.
Nate Media.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks. I'm wondering, you've talked about measurability of certain projects and
Yes.
before and after. Is there, and how commuting to a game by car is 70% of the carbon footprint, roughly?
In many cases, yeah, as much as 70%.
Okay. Are there any measurements of what the cost is, let's say, to a municipality of the car driving? Let's say in Washington, D.C., there's public transit available, including Metro Rail for a lot of sports, and yet a lot of people still go by private car.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's a cost that's been measured in some cases, and if that could then be factored into some other kind of incentive program where, I don't know, people get better, raffles or, I don't know,
Absolutely.
ringside kind of
absolutely.
stuff.
I don't know the specific answers of the exact. Have studies been done to expressly calculate the specific costs, both from a financial standpoint, but also from a pollution standpoint and carbon footprint. But I can tell you that a lot of teams are very aware of this, and the Blazers example was but one. Many teams now, the Mariners come to mind again, I believe the Yankees are doing this as well in New York, offer premium parking for people who are carpooling, or people who, if they insist on taking their car, they're at least driving an electric vehicle. In fact, many of the stadiums are putting in electric charging stations with preferred seating, preferred parking areas as an incentive. Now, it's just the tip of the iceberg. A lot more needs to be done. In fact, a multimodal campaign like the Blazers encourage not just people biking, but using public transportation and commuting together if they can. So yeah, it's a very, very large and complicated problem because we're Americans and we love our convenience. And that's one of the biggest challenges of any marketing or public engagement campaign, is to shift people's attitudes from convenience and me to what's good for us as a community and good for the earth as a whole. One of the bigger challenges of any marketing. So you hit it dead on with that question.
Thank you so much for being here, Joe. Please join me giving a round of applause to
Thank
Mr.
you.
Joey
I'll be around all
Khirallah.
day, and please do reach out to the Green Sports Alliance. We'd love to hear from you, and if you have ideas or questions, please keep us in mind.
Amazing.
Have a
Thank you
great
so
day.
much.
Thank you.
Over to Max now.